going on YouTube, Gen X? Wow. Like I said before, I know a lot of black women won't admit to this, but when you start to talk about what's going on between, black men that supposedly get it, then you get into the sort of, oh, they're intimidated by, successful black women. But like I said before, that's funny because then the same woman will talk about how men who don't have their shit together approach them. So I'm like, if they're approaching you and they don't have your quote-unquote same level of success, then why would the dudes that have some shit going on be intimidated? If the dude who's broke has no problems in trying to get at you, why would the dude who has money in his pocket, all of a sudden be intimidated? It just doesn't make any sense the way the women put it out there. The way they make that argument, it doesn't work. It's like, do you want me to help you with that argument? Because the way you guys are doing it makes no sense to me. But like I said before, a big part of the problem is that when you're dealing with the man who has his shit together, there's no sort of intellectual superiority. And a lot of the times, we can say it doesn't happen, but a lot of the times, we try to have these sort of conversations and these debates about what's going on between black men and women, and a lot of black women want to run through this sort of intellectual superiority. Like they understand some shit at a level that you don't. And I'm like, you can play that game for only so long. And I will admit that, for a lot of the women, it's pretty easy for them because a lot of brothers don't necessarily do a good job at making the argument or whatever. I know Willie Peters touched on that, but a lot of the times, a lot of women go out of their way to engage in conversations with men they clearly know they have that sort of intellectual edge over, or, they're not even in the same playing field. And we see this happen time after time. Right? It's funny because you have your certain segment of black women that will complain about not getting a certain type of black guy, but when they want to engage in conversation and they want to pull on examples, they will run to black men that don't fall into their similar grouping. Right? But we've all talked about that before. But like I said before, a big part of it is not having that sort of intellectual superiority where they can come through and, drop a one line on you and it's kind of like, deal with that. What about that? And you're sitting back and I'm like, okay, would you like for me to respond? There is no sort of, I can say or do whatever, which can be very difficult if that's something that you're not used to. You're not used to being checked by a man or being in a relationship where a man has the ability to say, you're on some bullshit, and I can actually call you out. And, that's difficult. If you've never grown up with that, to now be in a situation where you're dealing with somebody being able to call you out, right, and actually instill some sort of consequence for bullshit, it's very hard to deal with. And so, like I said, for a lot of women, there's that element of, I'm kind of like staying away from it because of that. I can't get away with bullshit, and most brothers, or at least the ones that, have went to college or whatnot, there's always been that one relationship where everything is good, but she kind of doesn't like the fact that you can call her out on bullshit. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like the fact that she can't say or do whatever, and you're not going to say, I know what's going on. Or the fact that you can engage her and debate her and say, well, this, that, and the third. All right? We've all been down that road. I have a buddy that's going through that same shit right now as we speak. When it comes to reaping the benefits of men who have their shit together, that's all there. But when it comes to the other side, where it's kind of like, oh, shit, he can hold his own, there's the problem. Now, I got this long PM about, hip-hop and exploiting women, and, she got on me for not doing, you claim to be progressive and about this and about that. How come you haven't attacked hip-hop, this, that, and the third? And I kind of already went over that, but it is what it is. But I have to call her bluff because this was the same girl that, talked about the whole how come only a certain type of black woman is portrayed in TV, especially, music, hip-hop, and R&B, yada, yada, yada. It's always the light-skinned girl or the biracial girl or the girl that's not even black and they're trying to pass her off as black, yada, yada, yada. You know, how come we can't get more women of color? And I'm sitting back and I'm like, you know, most people would say, you go, girl. You got it right. You get it, and walk away. But I'm like, honey, you got yourself caught up. One day you're talking about how hip-hop exploits and degrades black women, which is true. But then you're saying you're upset because there's not enough darker-skinned black women in hip-hop music videos, which is also true, but they kind of contradict each other. You're saying that hip-hop is bad for black women, but then you're saying you're upset because not enough black women, you know, there's not enough diversity when it comes to how black women are shown in, you know, rap and R&B music videos. So I'm like, okay, if anything, shouldn't you want them to take out the lighter-skinned black girls, right, because it's hurting black women overall, but you want to put more black women into that same sort of negative cycle, or whatever you want to call it, where they're being quote-unquote degraded and belittled? Like, why would you, you know, have that argument? No reply, no response, shut it down. Because she couldn't, you know, intellectually trump me, or more than likely she got exposed to what was going on, and I feel this way about a lot of black women. I don't think that they have a problem with how black women are portrayed, or this, that, and the third. I think they're more upset with who's being shown, truth be told. Because if we turn on a music video and those are darker-skinned black women, you know, who was like the major love interest or this, that, and the third, it wouldn't matter what was going on. I think a lot of women would be happy with that. Now, I'm not saying that most of your black women feel this way, but to me, how many black women have you ran into? I'm being, you know, fair here. You know, I'm trying to be fair, but how many women have you heard talk about how hip-hop does this and that to black women, but then talk about how there's not enough women of color in, you know, hip-hop music videos? I'm sitting there, I'm like, why would you want more? It's already bad enough, so why would you want more black women to be in there if it was that bad? Right? You know, and then this goes back to the sort of, you know, not really getting to the point or bouncing around, you know, that sort of, I want to be there, but I'm not being in, so fuck it, I hate it. You know, it's evil, it's foul. You know, like before, you know, when interracial dating was something that I guess only black men were doing, it was evil. It's you know, only about sex, and it's unnatural, and it's self-hating, and this, that, and the third. But now, all of a sudden, you know, now that black women are exploring their options, it's something healthy. It's something, you know, new. Let's move past color lines or whatever. Now it's different. All right? It's the same argument. So it is what it is. Like I said, you can clearly see what's one of the major problems that, unfortunately, don't get talked about. Right? In my opinion, one of the many pink elephants in the room, where you simply have it where a lot of your black women have this sort of issue with the fact that they're dealing with men that they don't trump at the intellectual level. They can hold their own. They can support how they feel, or they can, you know, use evidence and logic to say how they disagree with you. It's very difficult when you're used to being able to say or do whatever because you know you have that sort of intellectual edge. But it is what it is. That's my video. Y'all take it easy. God bless.